Is a congregation that is not like many others. Being in St. Louis, the last time I preached, I told you it was just black, white, and kind of Hispanic, like more Mexican. But here is so many different types of people in this room, and it's very encouraging to be here with you all. Let's pray, and then we're going to jump right in. God, we thank you so much for today, for this time, for being able to hear your word, to be able to learn, to be able to grow, to be able to grasp understanding of your word and your scriptures. God, thank you for this family that we have that we're able to be a part of. I pray that we really make a difference in the lives of those around us, that we will be that light on a hill in a dark place, God. We love you so much. I pray that you will use me to get across what you want the people to hear today. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen. Clear my throat up. So, we're talking about following Jesus. The call to follow me, the call that he made to his disciples and to people throughout the Gospels. Last week, Tony asked us, am I following? That's a really good and very intense question, isn't it? When he asked the question, I paused because I was like, hold on, let me think about that for a second. Because it's probably not a question that you ask every day. You probably don't go to work thinking, am I following Jesus right now? 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 Because you're trying to implement following Jesus, right? I mean, so it's not something that we think about all the time. Hopefully it is, but maybe it isn't. And if you do follow Jesus, you know that it's not easy. Because in the world that we live in, it's challenging. It's hard. There are hardships, there are challenges, there are tragedies, there are things that happen that are out of our control. And to follow Jesus in the midst of those things sometimes feels more like a burden than a joy and a blessing. I'm super encouraged by these videos too. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even think I need to preach after that. I mean, that's... This week and last week are both great examples of people who answered the call, regardless of where they were, regardless of their life stage, regardless of what they were going through. They answered the call to follow. Since my wife and I have been back, that question, am I following, has been really hard to answer sometimes. Because I'm coming from a place where I was getting paid to be a Christian, essentially. Right? Is that what it is? Hope you're ready to laugh and have a good time, right? But I was getting paid to grow close to God and to help others do the same. So following Jesus was somewhat easy because it was also my job requirement. If you ever apply for a ministry position, you have to be close to Jesus. You know what I mean? You can't just be some guy and say, you know what, man, I'm going to walk into this church. I'm going to go get me a job. I'm going to lead the teens. Nah, hold on, man. Time out. You got to be close to Jesus in order to do that. But now I don't do that anymore. That's not my job anymore. I work in sales now. Last time I preached, I was on the phones making phone calls. Now I've gotten somewhat of a promotion. Got a better job. My company got bought out by the largest construction rental company. And most of you are like, what the heck is a construction rental company? Look up United Rentals. That's what I work for. Plug. And I'm there from 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And we're understaffed. And I'm the one that's primarily bringing the money to the house. If you're a father or a parent or a man or you're anybody, that can be a lot of pressure. Ever since I got married, I felt like, okay, I need to make sure that my wife and I are taken care of. And then you have a child and you're like, oh man, I got to make sure this kid stays alive. And so, obviously, we need money to do those types of things. And we're used to, I hope you don't mind me being real, man. I'm used to having extra money after the bills are paid. It's not been the case. And it was like this before I went to St. Louis. Before I went to St. Louis, I'd worked, Subway, UPS, Publix. I did all these things, Taco Bell, all kinds of jobs. And I was always broke. Being in St. Louis, cost of living is really low. And my wife and I got really good at managing our funds. And so we were financially okay. We weren't able to chip away at all of our debt, but we knocked down some. But we were good. So being in a place where that's not the case, and I'm away from my house for 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, following Jesus gets harder and harder. Because now I'm trying to figure out, what do I have to do to bring in more money? I try to take control of my situation. Anybody know what that's like? I try to take control. Instead of, God, I trust you. I will stay close to you, which is hilarious, right? Because the last time I preached, I talked about remaining in the vine. I try to take control. Maybe I need to get another job, which would take me away more from my family. And my wife is pregnant. So to have an 18, 19-month-old child running around the house, my father-in-law started working, which is nice. So that means that my wife is by herself with a kid and a kid. Mamas, you know what that's like. You got a little kid running around and you're trying to keep the one inside your stomach alive while hoping that the one that's running around doesn't bust his teeth. And as a husband, as a father, I step back and I look at my situation. I think, there's got to be something I can do. There's got to be something more than I can do. And to be honest, I get paid pretty good at my job. But when it's the primary income, to me, it doesn't seem like it's enough. But that's kind of human nature, isn't it? What else can I do to fix my situation? What can I do to change this? Because God isn't doing it right now. And again, I was in the ministry, right? So I know how to be like, I'm not mad at God, man. I'm just mad at my situation. But I'm not reading. I'm not praying. I'm not really joyful about being a disciple. I'm not really being an example at work. I'm just kind of blending in with the crowd. And when you go from working with Christians to working with men, you know what I'm saying? Men that just burp and fart and they just don't care about nothing. And they curse all the time. You're just like, you're like, whatever, man, this is what dudes do. I'm in an extreme situation. There are no ladies around, just guys. Amen, man. Amen. So being like Christ, following Jesus. So when Tony asked that question, it was like a shotgun went off. Am I following? Are we following? Are you following? Am I following? In Matthew 16, you don't have to turn there. You can actually turn to Genesis. You can go to Genesis 37 and just hold your finger there or turn your phone on there. In Matthew 16, 24, it says, Then Jesus said to his disciples, If anyone will come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. If anyone will come after me, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And think about when Jesus says this. All right, if you read in Matthew and you read in Luke, you get the same similar story, and Matthew elaborates a little bit more on more like little pieces. But he's healing people. He's taking care of people, meeting their needs. He even feeds 5,000 of them. And that's just counting the men. And we look at that, right? Oh, that's a miracle. That's so amazing. And so everywhere Jesus goes, what's happening? People are like, I'm going too, because I might get dinner tonight. Right? Because the disciples were like, yo, send these guys away. Let them go somewhere into the town and get some food. And Jesus is like, no, you feed them. You feed them. He had compassion on these people. Then he tells his disciples, he asks them, who do people say I am? They say, oh, you're the Messiah. They say, oh, or his people say, you're a prophet of old, you're Elijah. And then he asks, who do you say I am? And Peter, of course, you're the Messiah. Bless you, Peter, for this was not revealed to you, but it was revealed to you by man, by God, not by man. Then he tells them he has to die, and he has to suffer many things for what he believes and for what he's here for. Peter says, no way, Jesus, not going to happen. Shut up and get behind me, Satan. Can you imagine? He just told him, man, bless you, Peter. Shut up and get behind me, Satan. You're not concerned with the things that God is concerned with. You're concerned with merely human concerns. And then he says, anyone who will come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. When I read that, it makes me think, oh, it's easy to follow Jesus when life is good. It's easy to follow Jesus when he's providing for you, when you got extra money in the bank after you pay all your bills. You're able to go on some dates and do some fun things and go see Black Panther. But when you can't, when things are hard and when things are challenging, and Jesus says, hey, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. At least I have is, come on, Jesus, man, like, this is not how it was supposed to go. Coming back home was supposed to be a good thing. It was supposed to happen right. It was the way I planned it was. Are we following? I want to look at somebody in the Bible. His name is Joseph. We're going to be in chapter 37 of Genesis. And we're going to read some. I'm going to stop and talk some, and we're going to take a ride. You're going to take a ride with me. Is that okay? So, Joseph, who is this guy? Genesis 37, verse 2. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. So he's a snitch. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his sons, because he was born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. And when his brothers saw this, that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream. And when he had told his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to the dream that I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down. He's prideful. He's cocky. I mean, you have to know that your brothers don't like you, right? Why would you go tell them that? If they don't like you, it's not like they're pretending, right? I mean, you live with the dude, so if you don't like him, you don't like him. He knows. Yet, he tells them this dream. Snitch, prideful, cocky. This dude is not looking good. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he said. Then he had another dream. And he told it to his brothers. He listened, he said, had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father, why would he tell his dad this dream too? What's wrong with this kid? He's 17, that's what it is. I'm kidding. Teens are cool, man. I love y'all. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will you, or will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept this in mind. Dad is wise. Hold on, he had 2 dreams like this. This might mean something one day. So we see this kid, Joseph, cocky little dude, man, who has these dreams about his family bowing down to him. He's the youngest. Any babies in the house? Like you're the youngest of 12 or 3 or 2? Could you imagine walking up to your older siblings and be like, "Guess what, bruh? You're going to bow down to me." That's messed up. So what happens? His brothers, they plot to kill him. These some cold-blooded brothers, man. I mean, for you to hate your brother so much that you're going to try to kill him, that's pretty intense. So instead of killing them, they sell them into slavery. I'm kind of fast-forwarding some. They sell him into slavery. And then after being sold into slavery by his brothers, he gets bought by Potiphar. So right here you can imagine, okay, yeah, he's a snitch. Yeah, he's cocky. But man, being sold into slavery by your own blood, that's got to be beyond hurtful. And I'm sure he's probably wondering, wait a second, I had dreams that they're bowing down to me. Why am I a slave now? If anybody could be mad at God, Joseph could fit that, I think. But let's keep going. Chapter 39. Chapter 39 and verse 1, it says, "Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian, who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites and had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. And when his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in the eyes and he became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household and entrusted him to his care of everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in his house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had to Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Wow. Very interesting. In a situation where this dude is supposed to be probably the most frustrated he should be or could be, it's evident that the Lord is with him. Now, I don't know if Potiphar just saw an aura around him, but I think that even in the midst of his challenge, I don't know how many of us have been sold into slavery by our brothers. In the midst of that, he still was close to God. Denied himself and followed. He didn't allow his situation or his circumstance to determine his relationship with God. Right? Because we can't control what happens oftentimes. But we can control our relationship with God because that's on us. Now, we also know that Joseph was well-built, good-looking young dude, handsome. And now that he's in charge of everything and everything's going good, Potiphar's wife starts to take a look at him. Starts to see, I like this guy. He's cute. He's handsome, well-built, and he's making my husband's house prosper. My husband ain't doing nothing. Maybe I should go be with him. Jacked up. And so now she tries to seduce him. Come to bed with me. Come to bed with me. Come to bed with me. And you know what his verbal response was to her? How could I do such a thing against God? Not against Potiphar, not against my master. How can I do such a thing against God? He runs away, gets out of the house. She holds back his cloak, and she frames him. She screams, help! I see y'all waking up back there. She screams, help. Her attendants come and attend to her. And she says, this guy has been brought here to make sport of us. He tried to sleep with me. She tells her husband is flaming. He's hot. I trusted this dude with everything except the food I ate. He gonna do this with my wife? And he gets thrown into prison. Come on, man. Come on, man. This kid gets thrown into prison. And he's in prison. And what happens in prison? The Lord was with him. The warden sees it and says, man, look, man, I'm going to leave you responsible for everything. I don't want to worry about nothing in this prison cell, man. This is you. Appreciate you, Joe. That's insane to me. That's insane to me, right? Because think about it. He's supposed to be mad. He's supposed to be frustrated. I just got framed and put in prison for something I didn't do. Not to mention, my brothers sold me into slavery. And the Lord is with him. Now, maybe this is one of those, like, God is just working it out, man. But come on, man. Like, if you can see that the Lord is with somebody, that means they're doing something. That means that regardless of their situation, he's probably not holding his head down. And I'm sure that there's nights where Joseph is like, come on, God, like, what's up? What's up, man? Like, what did I do? Okay, man, I'm cocky. I snitched on my brothers. But, man, really? They sold me into slavery? God, I didn't even sleep with this lady, and I'm in prison. Why is this happening to me? Why are you doing this to me? What can I do to change my situation? Oh. He doesn't ask that. He just remains close to God. He works through those emotions because I'm sure he has them. There's no way you can get put in prison for doing nothing and not feel frustrated with God. There's no way. I don't think. Come on, he's human, man. We're human. If my brother sold me into slavery, I'd be mad at them for a long time. You still with me? Chapter 40. Verse 1, sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. So he's getting more responsibility. Some guys messed up with their jobs. Pharaoh kicks them into prison. They have dreams. And so now we start to see kind of a shift. They have dreams, and Joseph is like, hey, I can tell you what they mean. I don't think in a cocky way this time, though, right? I'm sure he's been humbled after some time. Like, not like, hey, I can tell you them dreams, bruh. I think it's more like, hey, you know what? Tell me what your dreams are, and I'll help you out. A little more humble this time. They tell him their dreams, and he tells them, look, you're going to die. Simply put, I mean, you're going to die, and you're going to be reinstated. And he tells the one that gets reinstated, hey, don't forget about me. Don't forget about me when you get out. So the other one goes out, he dies. And the other one gets reinstated. And you know what happens? 2 years go by. 2 years goes by, and Joseph is still in prison. Come on. It just seems like things are piling up on this guy. Because he could have easily, right? He could have easily come out and said, hey, you know what, my Pharaoh, I am sorry for what I did. Thank you for giving me my position back. There's a guy in prison who told me that this would happen to me. I think you should take him out and keep him close. No, instead he waits 2 years until the king starts having dreams. And the whole time you're probably wondering, come on, Joe's in there like, man, why did I help that guy out? I knew he wasn't going to help me. I knew he was going to forget about me. Right? But we get caught up in our own lives, right? I mean, it's hard to help somebody when you're like, oh, I'm free again. I'm not in prison anymore. I get to serve the king. I'm not messing up this time. I'm not even going to talk to him. I'm not even going to say hi to him. I'm just going to bring him his cup, taste that, make sure it's not poisonous, give him his cup. But then the Pharaoh has dreams about a famine. The cupbearer remembers. He tells the Pharaoh. Pharaoh brings him out. He tells him and interprets the dream, gives him some advice, and he says, you know what? I like you, kid. You're going to be in charge of all of that. You know what? Scratch that. You're going to be my number 2. You're going to be the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. Wow. That's a huge turnaround from being sold into slavery by your brothers. You know how much time went by from when he got sold into slavery to when he got raised up to number 2? 13 years. About 13 years. So now he's 30. He was in Potiphar's house for about 11 years and then in prison for about 2 to 3 years. 13 years going through challenges that we probably couldn't even imagine. And here I am, as I'm preparing this, I'm like, I've only been here for like 7 months. And I'm already feeling like, man, this being a disciple and being in the secular world ain't easy. Following Jesus is not easy. But this guy, Brother Joseph, 13 years. And everywhere he went, he got a promotion. Everywhere. Regardless of his circumstance, it was evident that he was close to God. Are we following? This is hard. Joseph is a great example of someone who denied himself. Denied himself and said, you know what? Regardless of my situation, I'm going to continue to follow God. And I like his response in chapter 39 when Potiphar's wife was trying to hit on him. When he says to her, how can I do such a thing against God? It's evident with just that sentence, I think, that he is concerned with the things that God is concerned about and not merely human things. So question for you, for us. Are you concerned with the things that God is concerned about? Follow-up question. Do you know what God is concerned about? As I was going through this, right, this has been like a month process for me. And I've been getting grinded by the Word and by God. And all of a sudden, one day it was like the Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount. It's Jesus' first sermon that was recorded that we can look at and see, hey, this is how I want you to live. Right? Because when he says, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me, they knew what that meant. This Christian walk, this discipleship is not going to be a cakewalk. We're going to have to carry our cross. We're going to have to struggle. For them, they might have to die for this. We don't think about that here in America. We don't think about that here. When we say take up our cross, some of you probably thinking, what does that look like for me? What does that look like? right? I mean, has anybody been persecuted to the point of having to get put in prison? Maybe you have. You don't have to raise your hands. I don't know anybody personally. I've been a disciple, believe it or not, for 17 years. Actually, 2 weeks, it's my birthday, I'll be 18. My 18 years of being a disciple, I haven't been put in prison for my faith. I haven't been persecuted to the point of me considering whether or not I want to be a disciple or not. My life has never been threatened for this. So the idea of taking up my cross was always this kind of fluffy idea. In theory, I know I might die for this, but I'm in America, so I'm probably not. Right? So what does it look like? So I don't want to like downplay what we go through over here. The rest of the world that are Christians in Muslim countries, they go through a lot worse. We have challenges, we have hardships, but I feel like the Sermon on the Mount, I heard it said once, a brother named Greg Moreski, I don't know if anybody knows him in here. He says, you know what, brother? I believe if people were to live out the Sermon on the Mount, they'd be fine. 2 chapters. Read them, right? So I went through and I read them, and I just wrote down what I thought that what God was concerned about. Forgiveness, faithfulness, and self-control. Keeping our word. Not retaliating. That's a hard one for us though, right? Somebody at work gets on your nerves. On my face. Well, I don't have to talk to you. I don't have to be nice to you. You cut me off in traffic, so I might cut you off back. Or I'll give you that mean stare as we're at the stoplight. Right? Small things, right? But think about it. Would Jesus do that? If we're following Jesus, we know what that means to follow, right? We're like collecting the dust of Jesus as he walks. We're so close. We're watching how he interprets the word. We're watching how he speaks. We're watching how he talks to people, how he treats people. That's following. You're following a rabbi, you're close. You spend a lot of time with him. Loving our enemies. You might not like this. You might not want to hear this, but has anybody prayed for the kid that shot up Parkland? Has anybody considered the fact that kid is messed up and he needs Jesus too? But that's upside down, right? Because walk up to the families that have lost their children or their spouse and say, hey, man, I'm praying for you, but I'm praying for that kid too, man, because Jesus really wants us to. They'd be like, get out of my face. Are you kidding me right now? You want to pray for this kid? You want to love this kid? Following Jesus is not easy. It's hard. It hurts. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. Giving and praying in secret to be glorified by God, not by man. Fasting. Fasting is something that I don't do. I don't. Because I've always kind of looked at it as something that we could do if we wanted to, as opposed to something that is expected of us. Because see, when Jesus talks about it, he doesn't say, if you want to, this is how you should fast. No, he says, this is how you should fast. It's an expectation. Storing up treasures in heaven, not worrying about your life, what you eat, what you wear, how much money you make, how much money you're going to have at the end of the pay period. Look at the lilies. Look at the birds. Aren't they taken care of? Don't worry about those things. Seek first his kingdom. Don't judge. Treat others how you want to be treated. Golden rule. Even if they don't treat you that way. How about that? Being nice to people when they're just mean. Sometimes for no reason. Watching out for false prophets and doing God's will. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into my kingdom. When I used to read that, I used to think to myself, man, I need to make sure I'm doing everything possible. working out my salvation with fear and trembling. But when my finances are jacked up and things are hard, it's really hard for me to see that. Yeah, I come to church, I'm good. I've been a disciple for 18 years, I'm good, I know how to do this thing. Not everybody who says to me, Lord, Lord. That's scary. And then he ends with saying, put my words into practice. Wise and foolish builders. Do what I say. After all of that, right? I mean, he says it for us. Just put my words into practice. I'm changing the game upside down, not to mention the poor, the orphans, the widows, meeting the needs of people in our church, meeting the needs of people in our cities, in our communities. Like, these are things that are expected of us. And it's really, look, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm doing this, y'all. Like, you follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. I'm up in here like, why am I preaching to y'all right now? If God wants to use me, so be it. But I'm right here too, trying to figure out how to do this out there. My challenge, take something from the Sermon on the Mount and put it into practice this week. One thing, I'm going to be fasting. I'm not going to tell you when, because Jesus said don't make it obvious. But that's what I'm going to start putting into my practice, because for me, denying myself food is really hard. Because I like to eat. But telling God, you know what? You mean more to me than some meal. That's what I'm changing this week. And putting that into practice on a regular basis. So, are we following? Are we following? It's not an easy task. It's hard. It's challenging. But it's expected of us from Christ. Regardless of our situations. That's why I use the example of Joseph. Because now we look at Joseph and he's like Superman. We're like, how did he do that? He was a 17-year-old kid when he got sold into slavery. And it didn't say how long he was at Potiphar's house before he had all the responsibility he had. It could have been 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. It could have been towards the end of his stay. So think about that. 17-year-old kid. Don't let anybody look down on you because you are young. But set the example to the believers. Don't matter how old we are, folks. You don't have to be Superman to be a Christian. You don't have to be Superman to be a disciple. Jesus was Superman. Jesus did that for us. And we're not going to be perfect until we get there. So let's put into practice these things and continue to ask yourself this week, am I following? Let's pray. God, we love you so much. And we're so grateful for your word, and we're grateful that your word cuts deep. It challenges us and it forces us to think. Being a disciple is not just something that we do on Sundays, God. It is expected of us to be a daily thing. Jesus says to take up our cross daily and follow him. Father, I pray that we will consider that every day when we wake up, how we can do that. What does that look like for us in our homes? What does that look like for us at work? What does that look like for us in our neighborhood, with our neighbors, with our friends, with our family? What does that look like? God, we love you so much. We pray all this in your son's name. Amen.